At the start of each piece, you will hear this sound. Part 1. You will hear people talking in 8 different situations. For questions 1 to 8, choose the best answer, A, B, or C. 1. You hear a critic on the radio talking about a book. What is his main criticism of the book? A. The style is poor. B. The plot is too complicated. C. The characters are not believable.
Well, this was one I couldn't really get into at all. Of course, everyone talks about his highly individual style, and I wouldn't dispute that. He's certainly a very imaginative writer, and some of the characters in this one get up to some pretty astonishing things. But I felt that it was all a bit too clever for its own good. There are all sorts of characters who come in and then disappear. In the end, I just couldn't follow what was going on, so I gave up.
2. You hear someone talking about a time when she was a student abroad. What did she particularly like? A. The school she studied at. B. The town she stayed in. C. The family she stayed with.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I couldn't have gone to a better place. The family did their best. To be honest, I wasn't all that keen on them, though. They were talking to me all the time. They just wouldn't leave me alone. The teachers were nice enough. Mind you, I don't think I learnt anything I couldn't have got out of reading a book at home. Still, none of that bothered me because there was just so much to do there. I was out every night, at all sorts of different places, and I met some great people.
3. You hear a radio interviewer introducing a guest. Who is the guest? A. A scientist. B. A businessman. C. An inventor.
My next guest is a man who started with nothing and now has the world at his feet. From humble origins and a poor family, he's now responsible for equipment found in homes throughout the country. He spotted the possibilities of the new computer technology 20 years ago, and he made it affordable to people in general. While others were afraid to take the risk, he jumped in and set up the operation that now has the largest slice of the personal computer market. Ladies and gentlemen, Derek Woodrow.
4. You hear a caller on a radio phone-in program. What feeling does the caller express? A. Sympathy. B. Self-pity. C. Envy.
I think the previous caller ought to thank her lucky stars. I mean, she's got a choice of 3 jobs, and she doesn't know which one to take. If only I was in her position. I've been applying for months, and nobody's offered me anything. But you won't find me complaining. I mean, she might think she's got a problem, but I wouldn't mind having a problem like that.
5. You hear part of a radio interview. Who is being interviewed? A. A customer at a shop. B. The manager of a shop. C. Someone who lives near a shop.
So, how do you feel about criticisms of the new store?
Well, I can understand them, especially from people who live nearby and are worried about all the traffic that will come here. But it's going to be so convenient. People from all over the area will be able to shop at leisure and park easily, and I can guarantee that the service will be excellent. It only opened 2 days ago, and already shoppers are flocking here. After all, value for money is what they all want.
6. You hear someone talking on a public telephone. What does she want the other person to do? A. Explain something he said. B. Apologize to someone. C. Give an honest opinion.
Why don't you just accept that you were in the wrong? Tell her you accept that, and that'll be the end of it. I mean, you're just so stubborn, aren't you? You just can't see that you're not always right. Come on, why not change the habits of a lifetime for once and tell her that you shouldn't have said what you said? It's not that difficult, you know, and it'll really do some good.
7. You hear someone talking at the information desk in an airport. What is his situation? A. He has missed his flight. B. He has come to meet someone. C. He thinks there is a message for him.
Has the flight from Zurich arrived yet?
Yes, about half an hour ago.
The one that stops here and then goes on to Hong Kong?
Yes.
Oh, dear. I've been waiting in the wrong place. Have all the passengers been through yet?
I should think so.
Oh, no. They've probably given up and gone. Is there any way you could put out a message in case they're still here?
8. You hear the presenter talking at the beginning of a radio program. What is the program going to be about? A. How to eat healthily. B. New food products. C. Eating habits.
Welcome to the programme. In this series, we've looked at the latest goods on the market in the world of food. And we've looked in depth at what to eat if you want to stay fit and well. Today, we look at how much the advertising of new products influences what we eat, and how much attention people pay to advice about healthy eating. I can promise you, there are some surprising statistics coming up.
That is the end of Part 1. Now turn to Part 2. You will hear a talk given to a class by a young woman, in which she talks about her career so far as an actress and director. For questions 9 to 18, fill in the missing information.
What made me want to be a performer? Perhaps it's in the blood. I'm the great-granddaughter of an opera singer. I set my sights on the stage at an early age. Ballet was my first love, but I grew too tall, and so my ambition switched to acting. I took part in as many school productions as I could, and I ended up studying theatre studies at university. 4 years ago I left university, having secured a place on an acting course at a drama school in London. The course was just for 1 year, a year which I had to finance myself. I hadn't lived in London before. I come from a small seaside town, so it was quite a culture shock. Having to find the money was a strain. It was quite an expensive course, and I also had great difficulty finding somewhere to live that I could afford in London. Eventually, I managed to rent a flat with a couple of other students on the course. I found the first few weeks of the course really stressful and tiring, but a few weeks on I really got into it. It boosted my confidence, and it was much more on the practical side. We only had to do one theory thing. When the course ended, I was one of 565 students to graduate from a recognised drama course that summer. I was fortunate enough to get a job straight away with a theatre company outside London, working in drama in education. We went to lots of schools and I really enjoyed it. After that I went back to London, and it was really hard, because it was the first time in my life I had nothing to do. I'd always written essays or learnt lines and performed, and now I was unemployed. I wrote lots of letters looking for work. Wednesdays and Thursdays were my main letter-writing days. I went to see plays as much as I could, so that I could then write to the artistic managers and say, "I saw your production, would it be possible to come and meet you?" Then I met him or her, and I was at least on file. That way they might remember me if a part came up that was suitable for me. It's estimated that actors spend as much as 80% of their time looking for work. Someone told me that for every 20 letters you write, you may get an audition, and for every 20 auditions, you may get a job. Then my long-awaited break came. I got a job in a production called A Christmas Carol in a small theatre. It was a profit-sharing arrangement. This means you only get paid if the play makes a profit. Not many people came. We thought we'd done well if we got 20 people in the audience, and one night there were only 6. So it didn't do anything to make my financial situation any better. But it's amazing how much better you feel when you actually get a part. It made a huge difference to how I felt about myself. I then began to turn my attention from acting to directing, in an attempt to take more control of my situation. I directed The Illusion at the Duke's Head Theatre, and it got good reviews, but it was another profit-share arrangement, and I still had money problems. I kept thinking that I would be successful, and something was going to change. You've got to make your own luck, so each day I did something towards the plan of success. I made a couple of important phone calls each day, asking large theatre companies to come and see the play I was directing. I then set up my own company, the King's Players, and directed a production of A Family Affair, which won the London Small Theatre Award for Best Comedy Production. We had a couple of lovely photos in national newspapers and some great reviews, and that was great, because I could now be taken seriously as a director. Then I decided to try to appear in a TV commercial for coffee. I read that they were looking for somebody, so I wrote off. I thought, you never know. And I got a phone call from the company saying that I had been shortlisted right down from 5,000 to the last 11. But I didn't get it, which was a shame because I was fed up with working for no money. The one good thing that came out of it, though, was that I got an agent. One of the 2 main agents that cast all the adverts. So I'm waiting to hear about others. I now want to get a position as an assistant director with a major company. I think that's the next step, not just for the money. I think I'm at my best when directing. I mean, it's horrible on the first night when it's beyond your control. You can't do anything if something goes wrong, and it is quite lonely. But I am very happy, and I have greater satisfaction when things work than with acting. So I think this is the way I'm going to go. 4 years ago, when I started, I thought I'd be further on than I am now. I didn't envisage being unemployed for such long periods. I feel that I've developed and matured. Before, I presumed that I would be successful. Now, I still know that I will be successful ultimately, but it may not be simple. It may take longer and be much harder than I anticipated. That's what I've learnt. Nothing depresses me more than the idea of getting old and thinking that I never really tried, and I never made it because I gave up.
That is the end of Part 2. Now turn to Part 3. You will hear 5 different people talking about a concert on a radio phone-in program. For questions 19 to 23, choose from the list A to F what each speaker is doing. Use the letters only once. There is one extra letter which you do not need to use.
Yeah. Well, Barry, I went along the other night, and what I want to know is, why did they only play for 40 minutes? I mean, we paid enough for it, and the programme said they'd be on for an hour and a half. I wouldn't have bothered going if I'd known that was all we were going to get. I mean, it's not exactly fair to the fans, is it?
Yes. Hello, Barry. I heard some of your earlier callers saying how they couldn't see anything. You know, they were too far away and all they could see was the video screens. They couldn't see the band on stage. Well, all I can say is they must have got there too late. We queued up for ages before the doors opened, and we got right to the front, really close to the stage. Really, that's what you have to do if you want a good view, even if it does mean a long wait.
It's all right for all these other callers talking about the concert, but what I want to know is, how do you get in? I mean, I tried everything to get a ticket. I phoned, I wrote, I went to agencies, but everywhere I tried they'd sold out. I must have been going to the wrong places. So, has anyone out there got any ideas where I might have more luck next time?
Barry, you read all that stuff in the press about how they're not as good as they used to be. But you could have fooled me. I just wanted to phone up and say I haven't seen anything like it. And I've been to plenty of their concerts. I read somewhere that they didn't put as much energy into their performance as they used to. But all I can say is, whoever wrote that can't have been at the same concert I was at.
Am I the only one who noticed? Surely not. None of your callers so far has said anything about their new look. Personally, I thought it was a bit of a mistake. But what do the other fans make of it? I'd like to know what the general view is. I mean, the new hairstyles and clothes are quite a radical change. Do people out there think it's a good move?
That is the end of part 3. Now turn to part 4. You will hear an interview with 2 young people who spent some time travelling abroad. For questions 24 to 30, write D next to what Dan says, A next to what Anna says, and N next to what neither of them says.
These days, a lot of young people go backpacking, travelling around with all their possessions in the bag they carry on their back. I have with me today Dan Roberts and Anna Renton, who are going to share some of their experiences of doing just that. Dan, if I can turn to you first. You went round Europe, didn't you?
Yes, for 3 weeks in August. I left home at 3 o'clock on the morning of the first day of the holiday and travelled for 27 hours before arriving at Marseille, the first stop on our itinerary. It was exhausting. After this experience, I quickly got used to sleeping in very uncomfortable places. This is the only way to survive such intensive travelling.
Now, Anna, you spent 7.5 months travelling by yourself in India, Indonesia, Australia and North and South America. That must have been quite an adventure.
Yes. Apart from the occasional family holiday, I'd never travelled before I set out on this trip. I was very apprehensive about going on such an ambitious journey. What worried me most was the prospect of being lonely and the dangers of travelling as a single woman. But in fact, I was lonely only occasionally. It was worst at the beginning. After that, I was never alone for long stretches, because I made a real effort to meet people. If I wanted company, I travelled with them.
Did you go on your own, Dan?
No, I travelled with 4 other people, which was almost too many. But we avoided a lot of potential arguments by carefully planning our route before we left.
Did you have any problems with other people, Anna?
Oh, well, the constant stream of slightly rude comments in some countries made me angry, and I felt myself becoming more aggressive in response. Ultimately, these irritations were just something I had to put up with.
What about the places you visited?
Sometimes we had to be flexible about our plans. We found that places described as unspoilt and tourist-free in the guidebook can turn out to be obscure villages with nothing to see or do and nowhere for visitors to stay.
I went with an open mind, really. Some of the places I found myself in were pretty horrible. But that's all part of the experience, isn't it?
What about places to stay?
We usually slept in campsites or arranged our journeys so that we could spend the night on the train. That was cheap and relatively comfortable. Youth hostels were all packed in August and much more expensive, so we kept away from them.
Oh, I ended up in some pretty rough places. The sort of places I wouldn't even consider staying in at home. But I didn't mind that because it was all part of the adventure.
Did you feel you had to be careful?
Yes. I'd spoken to people who had lost everything. Students on trains seemed to be easy targets. So wherever we were, I always slept with my money and passport at the bottom of my sleeping bag.
Well, being a woman alone was something I was conscious of throughout the trip. I never felt physically threatened, though I made sure I didn't get into obviously dangerous situations.
Did your trip live up to your expectations?
Well, our tickets were valid for a month, but we ran out of money and energy before they expired, and came back. We'd seen a huge amount by then, but we couldn't keep up our enthusiasm any longer.
Travelling on such a large scale is very time-consuming, and 7.5 months wasn't long enough. If I were to do it again, I don't think I'd try to take on so much.
Would you go on similar trips again?
Yes, I think so. I certainly enjoyed the independence of it all, even though I sometimes had to do things because one of the others wanted to.
Actually, I have travelled by myself again since this trip, and will do again. There's an element of selfishness in wanting to travel alone, but you're so much freer when you're able to make your own decisions.
Well, thanks to both of you for coming in.
That is the end of Part 4.